Hello everyone, I'm Lucy Belmont, and today I'll be commentating over my Caestus only run of Dark Souls 3. The reason why only is in quotation marks is because of the fact that the run isn't technically only with the Caestus. It's impossible to get the Caestus before the first two bosses, but I ended up grabbing it on a casual playthrough, and I was like, what if I did the rest of the game with this? And here we are. Though I can assure you that for the rest of this run, the Caestus will be the only weapon I use. So here we are, and you can see that the save file picks up directly after having acquired the Caestus. I decided to test it out on these rats. Spoiler, it was not worth it in the slightest. After definitely not running past everything, I decided to call the elevator up, to which this polite young man responded by kindly jumping onto the ride in order to make sure it was safe. Unfortunately for the kindly man, it was such a nice ride that it ended up breaking his AI, for some fucking reason. I have zero idea why, and though this may be the first time I accidentally break enemy AI, it won't be the last. I then make peace with the giant. I didn't, need to. I would never be going through this area again, but, habit. With this done, I moved to help Siegfried kill the Taurus demon on the first try. This was obviously so that we could progress his questline for later. Upon defeating the demon, I for some reason still held on hope that my damage would be anything but dog shit at this stage of the game. So I tried to fight these two evangelists. Realizing that that was fucking awful, I promptly ran away to grab myself some new gear and a few items. The astute among you may realize a peculiar glow that I did not attend to at this time. Don't worry, I'm sure that won't come back to bite me in the ass later. Making our way back to the elevator, we exit Undead Settlement with basically no problems. Road of Sacrifices is up next, and you already know that I did the exact same thing that everybody else does. Only to then be utterly perturbed at the knowledge that Corvians near the bonfire don't de-aggro when you exit their small area. With those two kindly reminded of what the definition of personal space is, I made my way towards the Crystal Sage with utmost haste. The fight did not go well. So for the Crystal Sage, it's a mostly simple affair. Your own patience is going to be the key factor. Firstly, you can obviously use sound cues every time she teleports in order to tell where she's about to spawn before she does. Most of the time, you want to be as aggressive as possible, but when she busts out Crystal Soul Mass, hang back and wait for each projectile to fire. Normally, whenever you hit her, she'll immediately transition to teleporting as soon as she finishes her current animation. Crystal Soul Mass being active will halt her from performing the teleport, which not only means that her Soul Mass can still hit you, but it also makes you free game for being hit by all of her clones. Finally, if you hit her, it will stop her clones from casting new spells, but it won't stop them from finishing their current casting. Manage all those properly, and it'll be a pretty easy fight. Never mind the fact that I died multiple times! after showing you what happens to people who don't think the true ending of Nier Automata is worth their time, loveless. We're ready to proceed to Cathedral of the Deep. I started off by petting some local wildlife and then immediately asked a few polite gentlemen if they knew where the hentai monster was. Upon receiving a civil answer, I then beat up this old lady so I could acquire some drip that she was guarding with her life for some reason.
Damn, boy!
Past the Evangelist is two NPCs that only further my hatred for NPC fights post Dark Souls 1. However, it was around this time that I realized that the Caestus was a bit busted. No, obviously its damage is utter garbanzo beans, but for some reason, if you're fighting NPCs and you manage to get clean hits on them, it'll just cause them to freeze in place and allow you to just keep wailing on them until you run out of stamina. Seriously, if I'm using something like a broadsword, these fuckers always roll away after 1 or 2 hits, but the Caestus just causes every nerve ending in their body to go comatose for a short period of time. Now that those two ruffians are dealt with, we can go to one of the hardest parts of the run so far. It's a bit embarrassing to admit it, but I mean, it's nothing but dogs and archers, and since we're at the church proper, I'll be able to speak to this group of nice chaps in order to get an Estus shard. After acquiring the shard on my first try, we'll be making our way to the graveyard with respawning undead. Now, when I first got here, I was like, oh shit, this area has infinitely respawning enemies. I could totally farm souls here if I ever get in a pinch. It took me all of about 10 seconds before understanding how fucking abysmal this idea was. So I said fuck that, ran past everything, and picked up a greatsword that I would never get to use in this playthrough. Upon valiantly running away, I then proceeded to fight this one sword woman. It also wasn't worth it. After this, I decided to greet some more of the local wildlife so I could grab its succulent materials. If you think about why this is a waste of fucking time for 2 seconds, you'll have the same amount of regret I had after chasing almost every goddamn Titanite lizard in the game. Moving past that, it's a simple matter of making our way up through the roof. For whatever reason, I decided to go out of my way to get this item. I figured I'd just run past the enemies and grab it, but I forgot that this was Dark Souls 3, and the majority of enemies were capable of spinning themselves on their Z-axis like they're on top of a record player. After thoroughly embarrassing myself, I proceeded to fight every single enemy in this encounter except the Evangelist. Only to then find out that my reward wasn't worth it to begin with. I'm smart, I promise. So, anyway, it's time to enter the cathedral and be greeted by the denizens. The rest of the cathedral wasn't really noteworthy. I made my way to Rosaria's bedchamber since it was the easiest bonfire to access the deacons from, and after some failed farming, we can take on said boss. I was then met with a horrible realization. So, the Deacons of the Deep, for those who don't know, is a DPS check boss. You're tasked with getting the boss's health bar down as quickly as possible after the second half is initiated. There's a chance that I could have managed to clutch it, but at this point I didn't feel as though I was able to finish the boss before they started to fucking obliterate me. So because the deacons were walling the run, I can't fucking believe that I actually just said that. You already know for a fact that my ass just ran past the majority of things in it. So don't act surprised that we've jumped past Crucifixion Woods. During one of the moments of the keep, I had a brain blast and tried using an alluring skull to lure away a goat man. However, he caught the scent of a femoid and proceeded to do his mating dance. After dealing with the first 2 sconces and lighting the bonfire, we can then proceed up the comically large ladder. probably thought I was gonna play Snake Eater here, didn't you? Well, who's the fool now? So anyway, we light up the bonfire that's literally right next to another one, and then...
What a thrill, with darkness and silence through the night.
we immediately kill the stray demon and the inhabitants of the bridge. Next, we head to Crestfallen Warrior III, who at this point in the game will give us a heavy gem. This will change the scaling of the Caestus to a B in strength. It means that the weapon will scale much better with said stat as I level it up. It does also mean that I would be removing the scaling from dexterity, but I was hoping that the improved damage in the former would be lost in the latter. It would also mean that I could just focus on leveling one stat rather than having to split my levels between the two. I have absolutely no idea if this was actually as effective as I thought, but you're watching this video right now, so it means I at least had the stats and skills to win. Up next, we'll finish off Fair and Keep with the Abyss Watchers. For this fight, I adopted a much different strategy from my usual one. That is to say, whereas I normally just blitz the Watchers until the second phase, I couldn't exactly do that this time around since my Caestus didn't have the reach or the damage to be worth risking that. Instead, I'd hunker down until I saw an opening from the main Watcher. Once he was primed for a backstab, I'd go in. This was much easier to do once the red-eyed Watcher spawned and could draw aggro. Whenever the red-eyed one went down, I hunkered again until another one spawned. I'm sure there's another way to do this fight with the Caestus, and it might not make for the most interesting gameplay, but it was the safest method I could personally find to get through the fight. It was also around this time that I decided to allow myself to use the shields. Cause yes, FromSoft fans, they are a valid weapon class.
What the fuck's name are you doing?
After this, I finally felt confident enough to take on everybody's favorite boss, Deacons of these Nutcrackers. Initially, the strategy wasn't much different from a normal Deacons fight. I would just run in, hit the fuckers, and then book it after killing one of them. However, it was always the second phase that kept walling me. When that came around, I settled upon using the weapon art for the Caestus, which not only reduces damage taken, but also greatly increases poise, which would allow me to just keep wailing on them until my health got low or my buff ran out. Boy, gosh, and golly, Irithyll is up next. You might be wondering why it is that I have no footage of the Catacombs or Volnir, and that's because of the fact that my PS4 somehow lost it. Like, I swear to gods, I saved that shit, and when I went to import it to my USB, it was just gone. Real talk, who the fuck cares, right? Like, you already know I employed the old yoinky sploinky method, and would you believe me if I told you that the Wolnir fight wasn't hard, even with the Caestus at a low level? So anyway, now that we moved into Irithyll, you might have already noticed my favorite enemy, the Pontiff's Watchdog.
I hate this fucker.
It's pretty similar to the Sandworm in Smoldering Lake, where its attacks are all basically just thrashing about, as well as making the majority of its body into hitboxes, which... my favorite. Especially this moment right here. I'm holding my shield up towards him, and his entire body just fucking obliterates me. So after becoming mildly tilted, I busted it down sexual style and got the fuck out of there. Upon reaching Irithyll proper, I elected to actually start fighting some of the enemies here. This was so that I could make sure that I wasn't lacking too much on accumulated levels. I obviously didn't fight everything, but I at least tried to fight the enemies that were easy to stagger, including another Titanite lizard. I have my fucking... in my script, for some reason I wrote down reaching the church in the church. Oh god, I'm so fucking stupid. Alright, so lighting up the second bonfire, we continue to show everyone the power of love and your fists. After reaching the halfway point of the area, we come across the Watchdog again, since we didn't kill him before. I was going to just run past him, but then I remembered that he had the Pontiff's left eye ring, which regenerates HP with successive attacks. And since that's a pretty useful ability, I decided to go ahead with killing him. It wasn't a great time, and it turns out that he has a command grab, because of course he does. With the ring in hand, I was struck with a terrible realization. Once I got rid of some anger, I continued to make my way through the level. It was at this point that I came across the first Silver Knights, one of whom exhibited some of the most bullshit behavior I've seen in this game so far. See, in Dark Souls 1, you could trivialize a lot of enemies by just backstabbing the shit out of them. To counteract this, they changed the backstabs in Bloodborne by requiring that the player hit the enemy's backside with a fully charged R2 attack. This would then open the enemy up for a visceral attack. Personally, this is one of my favorite additions to Bloodborne, since it allows for a way to balance out backstabs without relying on excessive tracking for the enemies or just removing them outright. So then along comes Dark Souls 3 and it removed this balancing chain. But apparently there was a secret method of balancing given to the Silver Knights. That method being that the Silver Knight is just able to fucking spin around on its Z-axis to block my backstab animation. This also has to be somewhat intentional because there's a unique animation of my Caestus' backstab being interrupted by his shield from Michael Zaki. What the So anyway, I decided to just punch the shit out of the next two. Next, once we've dealt with one of the worst enemy types FromSoft has ever made, we make our way to an elevator, and I'm reminded of one of the reasons I love these games. FromSoft, that's some pretty smooth level design you got there, Michael Zaki. Too bad it's in the most linear game in the series. After burning my second UBS in the game, I promise I'm a good player, we moved to the Pontiff's Boss Fog, where I definitely didn't jump down this fucking balcony without unlocking the shortcut. Nope, definitely. Fuck. After running through the entire level and unlocking the shortcut for real this time, we're finally ready for the Pontiff proper. So, as you can see, the fight itself is pretty standard affair. Dodge and punish. which is pretty true of a lot of DS3. However, for some reason the fucker just stopped being after his clone clipped out of bounds. I have no idea if this is because of the fact that he and his clone are tied to one another, so the clone no longer registering me as a threat means he also doesn't register me as one, or whatever the fuck. But I thought at this point that I'd have a much harder time with bosses after the Pontiff, so it would be best not to look a gift horse in the mouth.
This is really embarrassing to think back on, considering I first tried Madeira, Lorien, and Yorm.
Anyway, with the Pontiff's soul in hand, I decided to finally trek back through the Undead Settlement to take down the Great Wood, since I would need his kiln to transpose Pontiff's soul into the left eye ring. I don't really have anything to say about this boss that hasn't already been said, nor does my strategy for him differ from a normal playthrough. I see what they were attempting to do with it, but it's ultimately one of the worst bosses in the game. It doesn't have a particularly satisfying moveset to fight against, it's got some wonky hitboxes on its pussballs, it has a command grab, because of fucking course it does, and the gank aspect is just a cherry on top. I have no problem with fights that are supposed to be centered around a good gimmick, or are supposed to be focused more on giving the player a unique and engaging experience above all else. But this boss does neither of those, so let's stop wasting our time on him. So, yeah. Turns out this game-long quest that I've been on ended when I consumed Vort's soul. All because I forgot which rings were where, and I didn't bother looking them up. I'm a very smart wolf girl, I promise. Moving on from that complete and utter embarrassment, I've unlocked the path to Anor Londo. I didn't bother fighting the giants down below, but once again, I attempted to fight everything on the top level, culminating in an amazing fight between me, Baldylocks, and Kylo Snow. After that blood-pumping engagement, I made my way to the cathedral roof, taking down the Silver Knights along the way, including this one who could not look more useless. Like, what are you guarding, bud? The recipe for Roman bricks?
Alright, you hand that shit over.
With my world-saving recipe in hand, we finally have the ability to make our way to Anor Londo, where I unlocked the shortcut and ran the fuck past everything. Anor Londo was already a pretty meh area in Dark Souls 1, and you got me fucked up if you think I'm gonna waste my time fighting the Silver Knights again. Aldrich isn't a fight that's terribly difficult. He does have some moves that are a bit scary to deal with, and we don't have the most health, but it's nonetheless manageable. Stay in melee range as much as possible, and make sure that when you're hitting him, you are closer to his tail, rather than his torso. This will ensure that you're able to keep getting hits on him while he's doing his teleport animation, which is obviously an AoE. His second phase does give him more attacks, but they're still manageable, so long as you keep your cool. With Aldrich defeated, we can make our way back to the halfway point of Irithyll to hunt down our final Lord of Cinder. On the way, we meet Ulva from Dark Souls 2. I had like a funny joke in mind, but to be honest with you, there's no bigger joke than Dark Souls 2, so let's move on. So like, I actually made my way through this area normally, but I don't have much to say on it. It's a pretty straightforward and bland area with little in the way of interesting encounters, as well as having one of the most frustrating enemies in the whole game, and I'm no exception to the people who really don't like them. It does have the crawling mimic, which is a pretty terrifying enemy, but other than that, it's not worth talking about. Once we get to the profaned capital proper, we make our way to the bonfire. From here, the player has two options of how they want to proceed to the boss. I decided upon taking the slightly more direct but precarious route. And here, we're finally here. One of my favorite bosses in DS3.
When you don't use Storm King.
See, when you use the weapon that you're given for this fight, it basically turns it into a pushover. I feel as though the point of this fight was to let the player feel an enormous sense of power when fighting Yorn. You see this giant and imposing figure, and to top it all off, he doesn't take nearly as much damage as you'd expect. But then you see this item, you pick it up, and it turns him into a joke. My problem is that not only is this a reused gimmick from Demon Souls, but with Yorm, I think it sours an otherwise good boss. Without Storm Ruler, Yorm basically turns into the signature endurance test of the game. Barring Midir, since he and Gale have among the highest health pools in the game, Yorm has a massive amount of health, which means the player is going to be fighting him for a long time, but his moveset is simple enough that an astute player can learn to dodge his moves within a few tries. Not only that, but he deals just enough damage to leave you scared of getting hit, but not so much that you can't make mistakes while fighting. All of these aspects for me are why I think Yorm makes more for a fantastic endurance test than a power fantasy. With one final punch to Yorm's ankles, his legs give out, and we're ready to get to the final stretch of the main game.
Unkindled one. The fire fades and awaits its one last reward. Prince Lothric is in your hands. Please save his soul.
Before getting into that, however, I decided to acquire some new drip. Don't ask me where I got it. Yep, you already know I did the exact same thing that everybody else does when they get to Osiris's level. This is the second out of 3 poison swamps in the game, and I'm not about to waste my time on this one since it's no better than the first one. Osiris himself is a pretty easy fight on a normal run. Unfortunately for me, you can see that I managed to get myself toxic before coming in, without the proper moss. So this aspect actually transformed one of the easiest and most annoying fights in the game to a pretty tense one for this playthrough. It's still a bit of a piss boss though. In his first phase, he has extremely simple attacks to dodge, but during his second phase in particular, he gets a little froggy with it. His moveset will change visually, but it's overall pretty simple. The biggest thing you have to worry about is the charge that he has quite literally no windup for whatsoever. He seems to be particularly keen on doing his charge if you stick close to his hindquarters, but I can't say that with certainty.
Dear little Osiris, where have you gone? Are you hiding from me? Come out. Come out. Don't be afraid. You are born a child of dragons. What could you possibly fear? Now, show yourself, Osiris. My dear little Osiris.
Upon defeating Osiris, I ran past the Flameless World level to get the Champion Gundyr. I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I'm not exactly a fan of this boss. Obviously, I would have a much easier time with him were I not using a Caestus, but even irrespective of that, I find Champion to have many of the problems that Elden Ring bosses have. It's just a harder version of a previously used boss, but barring that, he also has a lot of inconsistent windows for punishment, which I would say is his biggest problem. Not only can he cancel any punish window with his backwards kick, but he barely has any downtime due to him being one of the more aggressive bosses in the game. As though that weren't bad enough, he's also capable of comboing into and out of his strongest move, the charge. Overall, it's a bland boss that feels as though it was made harder for the sake of it, rather than providing a unique challenge, or memorable experience beyond that difficulty. With that done, I'm finally making my way to the capstone challenge of the base game, Archdragon Peak. Upon getting to the halfway point, we reach the Ancient Wyvern, and I dare say it, I was actually excited for this boss. Don't get me wrong, I'm not about to spout any hot takes about how this boss is actually really fucking good or anything. However, considering the fact that I've already faced a number of difficult challenges, and I was only about 2/3 of the way through this run, having what was basically free souls waiting for me at the halfway point this level was kind of a morale boost. Overall though, this is still a pretty bad boss. Not only is it really stupid since it doesn't just fly into the air to kill you when you run away, but its central gimmick is just another one that feels out of place. It feels like another attempt at a power fantasy moment like Yorn, but considering it comes at the cost of this creature's intelligence, it feels even worse than before. Moving on from that, I just ran past everything since this area has some of the most annoying enemies in the game, at least for me. Bell, I decided to also go back for the Chloranthy ring, because, yeah, I forgot that shit the first time around. I promise I'm intelligent. Lothric Castle is one of my favorite areas in the Dark Souls series, and probably my favorite in Dark Souls 3. But I unfortunately have absolutely nothing interesting to say about it, so we're skipping it entirely. Hello, Dragon Slayer Armor. I would skip YouTube, but I have to show you in order to prove to YouTube that this run was actually legit. Dragon Slayer Armor is by no means a wall of a fight. He's got good telegraphs, good hitboxes, and overall he's not so aggressive that you'll find yourself being passive for large chunks of the fight. Your biggest worry is going to be the Ember Butterflies that have an Elden Ring to your wind-up to their projectiles. Though I didn't have to worry about them much, make sure you keep your ears clear for their attacks and get the fuck away from where you are when they start coming out. Up next is our penultimate base game boss, Lorien and Lothric. I found myself disappointed by this boss, to be honest. It's a bit embarrassing to admit, but for my first playthrough of DS3, this boss ended up being my single biggest wall. Then for my second playthrough, I decided on a whim to do a Caestus run for shits and giggles, and I end up clobbering them on my first try. I was hoping for something a bit more climactic, but I suppose we've still got Soul of Cinder to look forward to. This fight for the Caestus doesn't change much from a normal playthrough, and since I don't have much to say in the commentary department, I'll let my battle speak for itself.
Oh dear. Another dogged contender. Welcome, unkindled one, purloiner of cinders. Mind you, the mantle of Lord interests me none. The fire-linking curse, the legacy of lords, let it all fade into nothing. You've done quite enough. Now have your rest. for that is our curse.
Noble lords of Cinder. The fire fades. And the lords go without thrones. Surrender your throne to the true heir. Let her grant death to the old gods of Lordran, deliverers of the first flame.
With the Lords of Cinder dealt with, it's time we finally capped off this run. It's been extremely fun, and easier than I thought it'd be, at least in the latter half of the game. However, all things must end, and this Caestus run is no different. That's why we'll finally be tackling the DLC. Aw, come on, you guys should know I'm not the type to blue ball you. Up next, we have the Ashes of Ariandel DLC. Which sucks. I'm just gonna come out and say that. I'm not going to even pretend like I'd done something interesting for this DLC, because apart from Wilhelm, I just ran the fuck past everything. It's a shame too, because I know that when I first did this area, I was excited. Not only are snow areas my favorite in games, but I was pleased with DS3 as a whole, so getting to Ariandel and finding what I did wasn't exactly a great time. The layout of the area is actually pretty damn good. It's a well-constructed level overall, and the fact that it carries you all the way through this massive expanse, only to then have you pull a lever, which turns out to be right under Ariandel Chapel, is a pretty memorable moment. However, in terms of everything else, it's just lacking. The rewards are extremely lackluster since they're mostly just souls, which are pretty useless for the time in the game that you go through this area, which is mid to late game, and while there are weapons to be looted, they're pretty unremarkable overall. Pair that with the enemies present, and it just gets worse and worse. We have standard humanoid enemies, which, while serviceable, are pretty bland. It also has a new variation of dogs, but apart from visuals, they still function basically the same. The reason why dogs are generally hated in the Soul series is because of the fact that there's no better word to describe them than wonky. They've got extremely small bodies, which makes them hard to hit with certain weapons. They're faster than most enemies, making larger weapons extremely miserable to use against them, and they're aggressive, meaning the player gets very little in the way of chances to retaliate. Finally, their hitboxes are almost never clear, since they're always lunging forward, and if you're locked on, the player's depth perception against dogs is basically non-existent. So, of course, because Miyazaki is a comedian or some shit, the beginning of the level is chock full of them, and even features a fight where you have to deal with one massive dog and 5 smaller dogs. The list of other enemies doesn't get much better. We have trees whose only attacks are a frost breath, a command grab, and fire projectiles that linger on for an absurd amount of time. Small crow enemies, one crawling and one walking version, which, while not particularly amazing to fight, at least make for decent fodder enemies. Not only that, but seeing one of them on the ground screaming for the first time is pretty memorable, I'll admit. Next, we have 2 different variants of giant crows. They look cool, but don't exactly provide an interesting experience for the player, since they've got fairly standard attacks for DS3 enemies. Lastly, there's a fly enemy, which is striking to be sure, but their only ability is spraying leeches onto the player. So yeah, not exactly an all-star roster of enemies. The second DLC is better in this department, but hopefully you can understand why I wasn't exactly eager to throw myself at the enemies in this DLC. With Ariandel almost dusted off, I decided to go ahead and do some final prep work to complete my build in between attempts at Frida. To do this, we need to get down to Smoldering Lake from the catacombs. We will kill yet another Taurus demon and make our way to the lake itself with basically no problems. Wherein I killed yet more Titanite lizards. I have zero idea why I did this for as long as I did. Once inside the ruins, I didn't bother engaging anything I didn't have to. The demon ruins have the opposite problem that Ariandel has. The level is almost entirely a bunch of hallways with almost no distinguishing characteristics and a bunch of enemies that we already would have fought before this in another area. Only things we really need from this area are the Estus Shard and the Bone Marrow Ash, so best not to waste our time. Unfortunately for us, the Bone Marrow Ash won't be nearly as easy to get. It's housed within this giant worm that people thought was Solaire for some reason. Anyway, here we have one of the worst enemies in the game. Overall, it's fairly easy. The problem is that it's only got 2 fucking attacks, both of which are capable of dealing tons of damage to the player. We have a lightning breath laser that also covers a massive area of the ground when it comes down, and the other attack, which is nothing but the enemy thrashing about wildly while its entire body becomes a hitbox. It's a pretty unpleasant experience, all capped off with the ballista firing bolts down from the player above. I'm not going to hold that last one against them since there is a way to disable it, but I didn't bother with it in this playthrough, so yeah, it wasn't great. The sandworm itself is still pretty pissed though. Cool design, but absolutely dogshit execution. Our final enemy in the base game will be the Old Demon King, and I'm not even gonna act like I have much to say about him. This boss is so unremarkable that I forgot to even include him in the video until I had all of the footage compiled, cut, ready to go, and was writing the commentary script. He is almost identical to the Doris Demon we fought twice before, but he has a few new attacks during his second phase. I don't have any cool music stuff I thought about doing with the boss, I don't find him to be a cool design, and I faced him well after the point you're supposed to, so he didn't even pose a difficult fight. Let's just get this formality over with and move on to the finale. With Frida finally on the horizon, I figured it's time to wrap things up. Frida is among the most popular boss in the Soul series, but if you thought I was done spouting hot takes for the day, I've got bad news. I don't like Frida much. Frida on paper is fine, however there are a few things that cause me to dislike her. For one, it's probably the most important: punish windows. Every action that the player takes in the Soul series is entirely uninterrupted, barring a few edge cases that allow you to cancel recovery windows. As such, it is important that bosses in particular are made in such a way that the player has ample time to punish them. Frida plays around with this concept, and I don't think it's for the better. At any point during the boss fight, Frida has the chance to simply dodge out of a recovery window or dodge away from any of the player's attacks. She is even capable of doing this with the player's backstabs. Now, this isn't to say Frida isn't fair. Technically, she is. All of her moves are well telegraphed, and she has almost no poise, meaning she can be stun-locked in most situations. Her ability to dodge out of punish windows is my biggest gripe though, because I simply don't find it satisfying from a gameplay standpoint. I don't find it satisfying to successfully defend against an enemy's assault, correctly identify a point where the enemy should be vulnerable, only for the enemy to then decide, randomly I might add, that they're just not going to be punished this time. This gets even worse with the backstabs, because you're capable of being locked into an even longer animation than a normal attack, while Frida gets to run away from them. It's a similar problem that I have from Elden Ring bosses, but at the very least Frida isn't nearly as bad.
Bring Frida to me, please. Canst thou not see the flame flickering once again? Soon will it surge. I can see it, feel it.
Fret not, Father. We have no need of thy flail.
'Tis only the flame quivering at misguided ash. Please avert thine eyes. I will snuff out these ashes for good.
Alright, nobody gives a fuck about Half-Light, so I'll be using his fight to give off my pre-finale preamble. I don't really have much in the way of commentary for these next few fights, something you might have picked up on given the Demon Prince. Instead, I'll simply allow all of you to enjoy what I've done for these final 3 bosses. I'd like to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for watching this video, even if it's not all of it. This is the first time I've done a video like this, and I'm happy with how it's turned out so far, at least to some extent. It was a tough road, clocking it at almost a month of work, and at the end of it all, we've got what I consider to be the hypest musical edit I'll ever do, barring another video that I've yet to release. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you next time, whatever that may be.
Set the mind is the
enemies. Red Hood is come to eat us, to eat our dark souls. What? Still here? Hand it over, that thing, your dark soul. For my lady's painting.
first flame quickly fades. Darkness will shortly settle. But one day, tiny flames, like embers linked by Lord's pass, Ashen One, hearest thou my voice still?